Hi guys, welcome to ETland, and today I finally got my hands on AYANEO Slide for a review. So this is actually a demonstration unit from AYANEO's Japanese dealer. I actually saw it at TGS and I couldn't forget it, so I back AYANEO to see if I can do a review on it with their demonstration unit. So thankfully they said yes, and I borrowed it from Highbeam, which is their Japanese dealer. So first of all, thank you very much for helping me to take this video, and I want to clarify that this is not affiliated and they do not preview my video. They do not give me any direction or instruction to take this video. So this is purely my opinions, and I'm going to talk about what I like and I don't like about this unit. Okay, so here is the spec of AYANEO Slide from their official website, and I'm not going to read it all out. If you want to take a good look at it, you can pause the video and take a good look at it. So I guess the most important thing in the spec is that it is running on AMD Ryzen 7 7840U, and the unit I have here is using 32GB RAM and 2TB ROM. So this is their best level, the highest tier of the product, and unfortunately it doesn't come with a Wi-Fi driver inside it, so they gave me this Wi-Fi adapter, and this was actually a disaster for me. The download speed of that Wi-Fi adapter was too slow, and I gotta change it to an LAN adapter so that I can download faster. But anyway, that's not the fault of AYANEO Slide. And I want to talk a little bit about the unboxing experience. So now I don't have the unit inside it, and probably you will think that this is the front, but it is not. If you open it from here, everything is going to come out from the box. So if anyone is buying this device, you gotta be super careful that this is not the front. Don't open it from here, and you want to do it on a table. Here, the one with the Slide logo on it, that is the front side. So let me just pack all the things back to the box and continue this video. I gotta say, this box is very cool because it resembles the cassette tape in the past, but really I just want them to make it a little bit simpler so that I can open it without any risk. The next thing I want to talk about is size comparison. If you compare the height and the width of it with ROG Ally, you'll find it is a very small handheld in comparison. However, it is super thick because it has its mechanism for the slider, and it also has the keyboard built inside. And now I want you to look at the grips of both devices. Although the Slide is quite thick and the ROG Ally is not as thick, you can see both devices have a less prominent grip, and that means it is actually better for people who have smaller hands because it is a lot easier for us to grab it. Next, I'm going to compare it with Nintendo Switch Gen 1, and we can see that the height and the width of the AYANEO Slide is less than that of a Nintendo Switch. But in terms of thickness, well, I guess this is like 2 times of it. The next device I want to compare with is the Odin 2, and it is amazing to see that although it is a Windows handheld, it is almost at the same size, or it is a little bit shorter in terms of height in comparison with the Odin 2. And if you remember my Odin 2 review, you know that I have many problems with the ergonomics, especially with the grips and with the rounded edges. If the edges of the device is rounded to the outward, it will force your hand to go outward. And because of the grips of the Odin 2 is very prominent, when you look at it, you will be able to tell. Especially when you look at the bottom part of Odin 2's grip, you know that it is a lot more prominent. And when you compare the bottom part of AYANEO Slide to the Odin 2, you'll be able to tell that the bottom part is actually shorter and the corner is a lot smaller. So when we flip it over, we can see that white part is coming out, which is the part where the Odin 2 is bigger than that of the AYANEO Slide. Although the thickness of AYANEO Slide is almost like a double of the Odin 2, it is still very comfortable to hold the AYANEO Slide with my smaller hands just because of the difference at the edges. And I'm pretty surprised by how thickness is not a factor to affect the comfortability and ergonomics of both devices. I will talk about the buttons and how reachable they are in the later part of this video. The last device I want to compare with is the AYANEO Pocket Air, and now you can tell how small the AYANEO Slide is. Well, not to talk about the thickness, but in terms of width and height, you can tell it is actually pretty small. And I do admire that they have kept a lot of design features from the airline. However, if you look at the top, you can tell that their fans are in different positions and their power buttons are different. Even the RC and LC buttons are located and designed differently. And well, it is like 1.5 or 2 times thicker than that of an AYANEO Pocket Air. But since it is a lot thicker than that of the AYANEO Pocket Air, you can see that the grip is less prominent, and that makes it very comfortable to hold for small hand people as well. You can tell that AYANEO really put some effort on their ergonomics. Here is just another quick comparison from the bottom view. Okay, so now we are done with the size comparison, and let's look at the slide mechanism. Here we can see that they have 2 sprinkles at the back of the screen, so when we slide down the screen, it will bend toward the inside and vice versa. Just like AYANEO mentioned in their live stream previously, if you bend the screen to a certain degree, it will not go down, so you have to make sure your screen is flat enough when you pull it down, or otherwise you'll not be able to pull it down. And this is a mechanism to prevent you to hurt your screen as well as your keyboard. Okay, next I want to talk about the aisles of this device. At the top right hand side we have the fan, and then in the middle we have a USB 4 port. And right next to it we have the volume buttons, and then we have the power button that also allows us to use fingerprint sensor. And at both sides we have LC and RC buttons. So these are just basic AYANEO buttons layout, and let's take a look at the shoulder buttons and triggers. In order to make a good comparison, I want you to look at the ROG Allies trigger buttons and then look at the trigger buttons on the AYANEO Slide. I consider the travel of the ROG Allies triggers at mid-range, and I can tell you that the range of the travel in AYANEO Slide is not that much. So for those who have smaller hands, or you just don't play any shooting games, racing games, you only play RPGs and stuff that do not need to have a longer travel for you to adjust any control, it will be a lot easier for you to use this kind of device. To me, I really like how short the travel of this trigger is, but if you want to play things that require you to have a longer travel, you probably don't like it. The ABXY buttons are relatively soft, and in fact they are the softest amongst all the AYANEO devices that I've ever used. And in my opinion, it is actually a good thing because AYANEO tends to use harder face button, and I think it is a little bit too hard. The D-pad is just as sturdy and responsive as other AYANEO devices. The whole settings joysticks on the AYANEO Slide is a lot smaller than that of the one on the ROG Ally, which is a good thing to me too. Now we can look at the bottom of this device and look at the aisles here. We have a USB-C 4 port and a SD card slot here, but where is the port for the audio jack? No, there is none, and I really hate that they don't have the audio jack for this device. Although it is a little bit thick, it is still a small device, and I would pretty much prefer to bring this kind of small device with me outside. So when you think about using it on a train or on an aeroplane or something like that, you probably don't want to disturb the others surrounding you, and you want to put on your earphone, but then you don't have the jack. Okay, so you probably have the Bluetooth connection, but if you're on a plane, not every scenario you can use a Bluetooth, and it also drank the battery faster, so I would pretty much prefer using a earphone jack. At the bottom we have two speakers, and these two speakers are actually quite good if you compare it with other AYANEO devices. However, I feel like the vibrator is a little bit cheap. Since I'm not turning the speakers to maximum volume, you can tell that the fan noise is kind of covering the sound from the speakers. And the vibrator inside AYANEO Slide is really kind of like those from the old and cheap phones that we would use in the past. Okay, now let's look at the keyboard. If we look at the keyboard, it is actually located a little bit lower than that of the others, so it will not be interfering with the screen, and the feeling of these buttons on the keyboards is actually quite similar to what you would have on a BlackBerry phone. I won't say that they are soft or mushy, but they are not difficult to press. But since the keyboard is very small, you can't type it in the normal way. If you look from this angle, you'll be able to tell that there is no interference between the screen and the keyboard. Since the edge of this device is quite minimal, it is not that difficult to reach the sides of the keyboard. However, as a small-handed person, this is very hard for me to get to the center of the keyboard. So you can see that I can kind of reach K and F on the keyboard, but if I want to go to G or J or Y, something in the middle, it is very difficult for me to press it. So I have to hold the device with one hand and then press the buttons with my other hand. But typing in this way will not be the safest way to hold a device like this, and it's kind of risky when you think about the price tag behind it. So I was like, if I were a guide, how would it be if I hold this device? And I wonder if it is possible for a guide to reach the center part of the keyboard. And that's the part I summoned my hubby and asked him to type a few things on the keyboard. So his comment was that even for a guide with bigger hands, it is a little bit hard to reach the center part of the keyboard. Even though it is reachable, it is definitely not the most comfortable way to type. And although it is convenient to have a keyboard when you want to type something in-game or you want to type your name when you create your character, I generally do not use the keyboard for other reasons. And for most of the time I slide open the screen, I probably just want to have a different viewing angles, and that's it. So if you ask me if this keyboard is practical or not, I would say it depends on the games you want to play. For example, if you want to play Among Us all the time and you need to type many conversations, then probably this is very practical to you. But personally, for most of the games I play, I do not need the keyboard and I do not mind to type them on my screen. So for me, I really don't need the keyboard, and if you ask me, I would prefer the AYANEO Air 1S because it is thinner, lighter, and they also uses the same chipset, and it is also a small device. Though with that being said, it is all up to your personal preference. And now I want to move on to the performance, battery life, and charging. Since the Ryzen 7 7840U has been around for quite a while, we all know that it performs very well, and AYANEO Slide is not an exception. Hogwarts Legacy runs at low settings without any hiccup and problem. It is very smooth and comfortable to replay with. Persona 5 runs at high settings without any problems as well, and I enjoyed it a lot. And of course, Palworld won perfectly. So performance-wise, there is no problem, but how about the battery life? Well, I ran all these games with Smart TDP on, and it gave me 90 to 100 minutes of gameplays in total. So I gotta say the battery life of AYANEO Slide is just average, just like any other gaming PC handheld. AYANEO Slide does get a little bit warm when you play over 60 minutes, but it never gets very hot and it is still comfortable to hold. The battery is going to drop faster when it gets warm, so you want to adjust the fan as well. I've done a few tests on the time required to charge it from 5% to 100%, and it took me about 2 hours. So if you think about the playtime of this device, which is about 1.5 hours, it is relatively long, and if you compare it to the ROG Ally, which only requires 30 minutes to charge up to 80%, it is quite long. So since this is just a demonstration unit, I do not know how much difference it has with the retail unit. So that's pretty much about my review on the AYANEO Slide, and I want to wrap up this video with what I like and don't like about it. Okay, let me start with the things I like about the AYANEO Slide. So first of all, if you have been here for a while, you know that I used to have a GPD Win 3. So in deep down in my heart, I kind of compare this AYANEO Slide to the Win 3, and it is such a very different experience. When you think about the slider, it is a lot smoother than that of the Win 3, and I really like that the screen on the Slide can be adjusted to certain angles, so it is a lot easier to look at, and it feels very light. I mean, it is over 600 grams, but the weight balance is doing very good, and you just don't feel like it is such heavy at all, and it is a small device, so it is more portable. I won't say it is pocketable because it is thick, but it is very portable and it is powerful. The other thing I like is that they are using a physical keyboard, which is kind of feeling like a BlackBerry phone instead of using a haptic feedback panel like the Win 3. So although it is not going to be like super comfortable just like those mechanical keyboards, but it is still okay to press and not hard at all. So I think that is a good thing if you really want to use the keyboard. The best thing I like about this device is their triggers. I mean, its dimension is almost the same as Odin 2, but I have zero problem in reaching or pressing any button, especially for the triggers, which was the biggest difficulties for me to use in Odin 2, because it has the because its triggers are so because the travel of its triggers are so long that it is very difficult for someone like me to hold and articulate. But the triggers here are very easy to press, and I have no problem reaching it because the travel of the triggers are not too long. I know if you are a guy, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, and you see no problem in Odin 2 because it is perfect size for you. But if you are Asian, Eurasian, or girls, or people just have smaller hands, you probably know what I'm talking about. We just can't hold it with a device that are rounded edge and with a longer triggers and looser D-pads. We just can't articulate and register the buttons. So it is very important to find something that we can articulate and control, because if we can't, then there is no point to play games on that device. FYI, I finally found a better way to hold my Odin 2 after holding it for 2 months. But still, I hurt my left hand because I played PSP emulation for 2 hours and I couldn't reach the D-pad, so I used a very weird posture to hold the device and I just hurt my wrist. So yeah, ergonomics is very important to me. Sorry for the sidetrack, and let's go back and talk about what I don't like about this device. So you probably have heard me saying that a few times in the video already, and it is very obvious that my biggest complaint is it is too thick. It is super thick, that it is the thickest device that I have ever seen. I understand that there is a keyboard, the screen pops up, and there is a slider, and you know, you have to be very compact to pack everything inside it, and it is not a thickness that you can't handle it. I understand that, but still I think it is thick. It's just thick. So if you don't like device being thick, you probably won't like this one, and I would suggest you to look into the AYANEO Air 1S instead, because that is just a device without a keyboard. Although it can't adjust the screen angle, which is kind of pity, but you know, it's just one of the features of this device. And the Air 1S is everything about this device without a screen and keyboard. Plus, the 1S also have the earphone jack, which is a good thing. So I think whether to choose the AYANEO Slide over the AYANEO Air 1S is really based on how much you need the keyboard and how much you want the feature that allows you to adjust the screen angle. And if you don't need these two features, you probably want the AYANEO Air 1S instead. The second thing I don't like about it is the long charging time. It takes me about 2 hours to fully charge it, and it only allows me to play 1.5 hours-ish. I don't know if this is because it is a demonstration unit and it may be a little bit different from the mass-produced units, but it may be something you want to concern if you want to travel with it. And the last thing I don't like about is that they don't have the earphone jack, just like I mentioned previously in the video. This is actually the first AYANEO device that I don't see any earphone jack, and I suspect that it is because they have already put too many features on this device and they don't have the space to put the earphone jack. And I still see the earphone jack on their Flip, on AYANEO Pocket Air or Pocket S, so I think they are trying to keep this feature, and I really hope they do so. I'm sorry for all those people who are expecting for a performance-focused review, because I didn't put my emphasis on the performance, since we have already seen many videos on how good the performance a Ryzen 7 7840U can do. So I don't think we have to focus on that, but since the form factor of this device is quite unique, so I think that should be the place where I put my focus on. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!